You do not stumble onto a life of adventure. You must create one. This is our first day in Iceland. We headed straight for the Highlands and were surrounded by some of the most beautiful landscapes in the world. The road from F210 to Vik was an adventure that we will never forget. This 113-kilometer or 70-mile route unfolds amidst awe-inspiring panoramas and is strewn with numerous unbridged rivers that can test the mettle of even the most seasoned drivers. This river crossing was the biggest on the F210 route, but Haley handled it with ease. Joey was sleeping in the back seat since we had just landed a couple of hours earlier, and he hadn't slept much. Although the F210 route was only 70 miles long, we spent over 10 hours our first day navigating this southwest region of Iceland due to the rough driving conditions and all the spots we stopped at along the way. At river crossings, we always stop to assess the speed of the current and the depth of the water. This is always a good idea due to the ever-changing weather conditions that Iceland is known for. It didn't take long into the first day for us to feel vindicated in renting a super Jeep with higher ground clearance and a snorkel for the engine. We would not have been able to visit these locations without it. The roads leading into the Highlands are actually illegal for vehicles that are not 4x4, and for good reason. This is not a location that you want to be stranded. After crossing the majority of the river crossings for F210, we ended up in the Mælifellssandur region, which is home to an inactive volcano named Mælifell. In order to get to this region, we had to travel across Mælifellssandur. Mælifellssandur is a completely uninhabited desert that lies between the Mýrdalsjökull and Torfajökull glaciers. There is almost no vegetation, just black ash cut by the numerous meandering rivers that crisscross the region. Stopping in this region to get some drone footage, we realized that we were the only people within hours of civilization. Joey jumped onto the roof of the 4x4 while I got some footage of the surrounding area. The feeling in this region is hard to explain, almost like a gateway to another world. The black sand desert and the snow-capped mountains was something we had never seen. We were so far out in the wild that we even felt comfortable letting Joey take the reins for a little bit. It was fun to see how excited he was driving the Super Jeep in a place like the Highlands. Moving further east past Mælifell, we started navigating through glacier rivers. The story behind these glacial rivers is even more fascinating. In Iceland, these networks of river channels flow from the glaciers towards the sea, carrying vital nutrients for the ecosystem along the way in the form of sediment. When the flow of the rivers decrease, the sediment gets deposited on the riverbed, leaving behind small temporary islands of dark volcanic sand that cause the channels of the rivers to split. The pattern of the glacial river systems in Iceland are dynamic, meaning that they will change gradually over time as the sediment islands get eroded away and the sediments are deposited elsewhere. New islands of sand are formed as the speed and amount of water in the rivers change. For this reason, it is hard to know which areas are safe to cross. Icelanders visit these locations frequently during the summer, where they change the position of white posts sticking up out of the ground intended to guide you safely along your journey. Eventually, F210 took us further enough east that we started to get into more vegetation. We took F232 south for about 11 kilometers to explore the waterfall Bláfjallafoss, which is a unique waterfall that you can drive over. This waterfall was out of our way and added time to our already full schedule, but we came across photos and videos before leaving for Iceland and decided we had to make this experience a priority. What's interesting about this moment is that it is already getting pretty late into the evening and it's still extremely light outside. Iceland's midnight sun is a natural phenomenon. It describes a time in the year when the sun doesn't set, sitting above or just near the horizon for nearly 24 hours a day. We use this to our advantage as we set out to visit one more spot on our first day, a waterfall known as Axlarfoss. Axlarfoss, a hidden gem in the rugged highlands of Iceland, is a testament to the untamed beauty of this remote region. This waterfall is a well-guarded secret, known only to those willing to venture deep into the heart of Iceland's wilderness. Axlarfoss remains one of the hidden treasures of the Highlands, relatively untouched by the tourist crowds that flock to more famous Icelandic landmarks. This seclusion and tranquility make it an ideal destination for those seeking a unique and remote adventure, away from the better-known waterfalls that fall along the easily accessible ring road. We had adventured enough at this point, especially directly after landing from a red-eye, and were eager to get somewhere to get some sleep. Our hotel for the night was in Vik, so we set off to get checked in. Vik í Mýrdal, or Vik for short, is Iceland's most southerly village and one of the country's most photographed areas. The peaceful seafront village sits along a dramatic stretch of coastline, quaintly poised between glacier-topped mountains, rugged sea cliffs, and black sand beaches. This is what we would set out to visit the next morning. The next morning, we gave Big Bertha, this is the name that Joey gave to the Super Jeep, a break and did some backtracking on the ring road. We had originally planned to visit a couple of waterfalls the night before, but were too tired once we got to the condo. The first waterfall on the list for Sunday morning was called Seljalandsfoss. Seljalandsfoss flows from the glacier Eyjafjallajökull, which is 39 square miles, making it the country's 6th largest. The most distinguishing feature of this waterfall is the pathway that leads all the way around it. You are able to walk the full length behind this waterfall and even down to where the water meets land. We started noticing very early in our trip that Iceland doesn't restrict where you can explore in these locations, which made it even more of an adventure. In 2017, the government announced that they were going to construct a visitor center for this waterfall. Landowners in the area strongly opposed this idea and proclaimed that the center would drastically alter the natural appearance of the waterfall's renowned scenery. The second waterfall for day 2 is the waterfall known as Skogafoss. Skogafoss is one of the tallest waterfalls in Iceland, with a drop of 60 meters and a width of 25 meters. Just like with everything else we experienced in Iceland, you are able to roam directly up to this waterfall without any restrictions. Just be prepared to get soaked in the process. The cliff from which these falls descend is the former coastline, which has now receded in a seaward direction about 5 kilometers. The former sea cliffs now run parallel to the coast for many kilometers. These mountains create a border between the lowlands on the coast and the highland areas of Iceland. You are able to access both the bottom and the top of Skogafoss, as there are steps that lead up to an observation platform above. It does take some work though, as there are some 527 steps, depending on where you start. Once you reach the top platform, the view of the waterfall cascading below, mixed with the many different seabirds, is amazing. After our morning of waterfalls, we continued to hug the south coast on Highway 1 to visit the Dyrhólaey Peninsula and the black sand beach named Reynisfjara. The famous peninsula Dyrhólaey is the southernmost part of Iceland, not far from where we stayed the previous night in the town of Vik. What is most mesmerizing about Dyrhólaey is the hole in the middle of the peninsula, which shows the true power of nature and how the ocean has been shaping the coast of Iceland for centuries. The season between April and August are extremely popular for puffin spotting, which was on the top of things that Haley wanted to check off her list during our trip to Iceland. These are pelagic seabirds that feed primarily by diving in the water. They breed in large colonies on coastal cliffs or offshore islands, nesting in crevices among rocks or in burrows in the soil. Below the cliffs of Dir Holae is the black sand beach named Reynes Fjara. This black sand beach is popular along the ring route and known for the black sand and the large basalt columns that rest along the shoreline. According to local folklore, these large basalt columns were once trolls trying to pull ships from the ocean to shore. However, these trolls were not that bright and went out too late in the night. Dawn broke on the horizon, turning the trolls into solid stone. The roaring waves of Reynes Fjara are dangerous and push further up the beach than many would expect. These are called sneaker waves, and they can appear when least expected, even on incredibly still days. There are no significant landmasses in between Antarctica and the shores of Reynes Fjara, meaning waves have thousands of kilometers to build. After a morning full of locations along the ring road, it was time for Big Bertha to take us back out into the wild. For our last location of day 2, we headed back into the deep Highlands to visit Landmannalaugar. Landmannalaugar is an extremely rare part of Iceland's Highlands that is known for its multicolored rhyolite mountains, geothermal hot springs, and lava fields. Here you can see a vast lava field in the middle of the mountains that begins the trail that we decided to take. The area is very remote, and those that do decide to venture out into this part of Iceland are usually camping out in order to hike the entire time. We hadn't eaten anything in hours due to the remote drive, but luckily there was an old military bus that was converted into a shop where we were able to find some snacks and some coffee. The 2 gentlemen inside of the shop were friendly and helpful when it came to choosing a hike. After fueling up, we headed out to hike the Laugahrán lava field. This is a shorter 4-kilometer hike that is popular amongst adventurers just passing through for the day. The lava field formed about 600 years ago and sits at the base of Mount Brennisteinssalda. Leaving the Landmannalaugar hut, the trail rises up, winding through basalt and obsidian while steam rises from cracks in the earth. The trail features a bit of scrambling, which we found to make the hike even more of an adventure and challenge. About 2/3 the way through this hike, a section opens up at the base of Mount Brennisteinssalda. The different colors of the mountains, the geothermal activity coming out of the ground, and the glacier rivers at the base of the valley make this an incredible spot to stop and take in the views. For the second straight day, we underestimated the amount of time it takes to travel in the Highlands and ended up trying to rush back to our hotel before we weren't able to check in. Our hotel was reserved in the city of Hofen, which is an Icelandic fishing town of just over 2,000 people in southeast Iceland. When we arrived to the hotel, it was already about 2 in the morning, but luckily a key was left for us with a note in the empty lobby. On day 3, we set off from Hofen towards the Stokksnes Peninsula, which has another beautiful black sand beach with rolling colorful sand dunes. This area is less touristy and is visited mainly by professional photographers. The land is privately owned and has a small entrance fee, which allows the landowner to keep up the maintenance of the road. Once we got to the peninsula, the land opened up to another black sand beach. We noticed a sign for a Viking village in the valley below the mountains that we had seen some videos on before leaving for our vacation. The village is a replica of an authentic Viking village, created as a movie set for a Universal Studios production. The studio ended up scrapping it as a filming location for budgetary reasons, and ever since, the area has been open for curious visitors like ourselves to explore. The village lies between the ocean and the towering mountains, bringing dramatic weather patterns for incredible photography and filming sessions. Although Universal never followed through with the original production intended for the village, Netflix announced that their series The Witcher would use the Viking village film set and other Iceland attractions in filming the show's prequel, Blood Origins. After our Viking adventure, it was time to set out east again towards the town of Egilsstadir. The next spot in our GPS was a waterfall named Folaldafos. Folaldafoss is located in East Iceland and can be easily located just off Road 939, the Öxi Pass, a mountain pass which takes you between Berurfjordur and Skridalur. You will find curves, bridges, and rough roads on your way to the waterfall. More raw nature, unlike the well-connected and well-structured places in Iceland where there are travelers all around. There are 4 waterfalls on this scenic drive. Fossardalur, the valley where the waterfalls are, is a beautiful, quiet valley that is made up of untouched nature as far as the eye can see. The first 3 waterfalls that we stopped at were just feet from where we parked Big Bertha. Walking up to the edges of these falls is surreal and is a reminder of just how remote most areas of Iceland are. Mulafoss, the last waterfall on the Fossardalur hiking trail, is another enormous waterfall which has a gravel parking area about 100 yards away from the falls. Haley opted out of getting wet this time, so I zipped up my rain jacket and got as close as I could get without putting myself in danger. The river that this set of waterfalls runs along is named the Fossa River. Fossa is actually the name of quite a few rivers in Iceland. The term fossa is derived from the Icelandic words foss, meaning waterfall, and meaning river. It is a common name for rivers in Iceland that have numerous waterfalls along their path. The walk up towards the falls was full of rocks which were all drenched from the mist, making it extremely slippery. It took me a while to get to a spot about 10 yards away, where there was a large flat rock to stand on. I put my hands up and let the water hit me. We saw so many waterfalls during our time in Iceland, but every single one offered a new and exciting experience. The last stop for day 3 was another waterfall. We headed out toward the Mjóifjörður Valley, which means narrow valley, in our search for one of the most beautiful waterfalls that Iceland has to offer. To get to this waterfall, we had to cross a snowy mountaintop with heavy fog. We couldn't see anything in front of us, so it took about an hour to go 10 kilometers. But once we reached the valley, it opened up into another awe-inspiring panoramic. About halfway down into the valley, there is a small sign for Klifbrekkufossar, which translates to Climbing Slopes Waterfalls. This is a single long waterfall with 7 drops and a height of 90 meters. The waterfall is far from major Icelandic cities, and the place is almost at the edge of East Iceland. For this reason, compared with other famous East Fjords waterfalls, Klifbrekkufossar is much less crowded. There is a pathway that leads over the small river crossing at the bottom and then to the last drop of the 7 where you can stand right under where the water is falling. This particular waterfall has a very strong current and is loud. The water flow was so strong that Haley didn't want Joey to go too close. But of course he did anyways. Once he proved there was nothing to worry about, she even got a little closer herself. The East Iceland town of Mjóifjörður has a population of 11 people. This small population allows its surrounding natural sites to remain untouched over time. And when you visit, the likelihood of you crossing paths with anyone is pretty slim. We tried to continue upwards on the path to explore the other drops, but it was too wet that day from the fog. Before heading back to our hotel for the night, Haley wanted to stop at a quick waterfall close by to check it off of our list. It ended up being one of the longest hikes of the day. We walked 2 miles straight uphill to get to this waterfall, known as Hengifoss, but it ended up being worth it once we got there. Hengifoss looks like something you would imagine on Mars. The walls have red and black hues that give a spectacular effect to the waterfall. The waterfall is known for these strata of red clay rock sandwiched between layers of basalt. The basaltic strata are 5 to 6 million years old and come from volcanic eruptions in the Tertiary period. The red bands are sedimentary and the red color is created by the oxidation of iron in clay. After this waterfall, it was time to get back to our rest spot for the night in the town of Egilsstadir, which is the main center for service, transportation, and administration in East Iceland. This makes it an ideal place for those who are traveling around the ring road to refresh and rest. It is part of the municipality of Múlaþing and the largest settlement of the eastern region with, as of 2020, a population of 2,522 inhabitants. Waking up on day 4, we set out west, but had one more stop before doing so. We were super excited as it was our 14th wedding anniversary, and we were heading to a spot that Haley had been waiting to see ever since our arrival. After parking our car, we followed the Jukla River for about a mile or so until we came across the location we set out for. This location is called Studlagil Canyon, which translates to Basalt Column Gorge. This location is by far one of the most beautiful and unique that we had encountered up to this point. A fun fact that most people don't know is that the Studlagil Canyon was only recently discovered. In 2007, there was a hydroelectric plant built in Karahanjuka Virkjun, which significantly decreased the water levels in the Jukla River. Before 2007, the water level had great volume and the area was too dangerous for locals or visitors to visit. Before the plant was built, the area surrounding the canyon was inhabited only by sheep. The terrain around the canyon is still very remote, and visitors need to be conscious of their surroundings. The basalt rock columns you can see at Studlagil are the same as the basalt columns that were shown earlier in the video at Reynisfjara Black Sand Beach near Vik. I have read that Studlagil has the larger of the columns, but after visiting both locations, I am not convinced 100% either way. The second event on our big day was 2.5 hours away from Studlagil. We officially left the east of Iceland and began our journey along the north leg of the Ring Road. We headed west towards, yes, you guessed it, another waterfall. This is no ordinary waterfall though. This waterfall is the mother of all waterfalls. This waterfall is known as Dettifoss. Dettifoss is said to be the most powerful waterfall in all of Europe. The waterfall is 45 meters high and 100 meters wide, and you can hear and feel the thundering flow as it roars over the edge of the Jökulsá á Fjöllum River. Unlike many other waterfalls we visited, this one did have strict viewing platforms and ropes blocking off sections that were deemed too dangerous. We had no issues with this, as we could feel the power of this natural phenomenon well before we approached it. Dettifoss is a stunning waterfall, and the mist from the falls can be seen from several miles away, as well as all of the rainbows that it creates. There's also an observational view platform that the three of us climbed, which gave us an amazing view of the falls and the surrounding countryside. The platform is quite a ways away from the falls, but the mist carries a lot farther than we imagined. If you visit, be prepared to get wet. We left Dettifoss with full intention of heading straight to Húsavík for our anniversary evening, but along the way, we came across a geothermal area called Hverir. This geothermal area is close to the famous Lake Mývatn and is literally just feet off of the Ring Road. It's quite a sight to see when you get close, so we decided we had to stop and take a look around. Hverir was formed over millions of years and was shaped by volcanic activity, leaving behind a landscape rich in geothermal features. Hverir is scattered with what are known as fumaroles, or steam vents, releasing columns of hot steam into the air. These vents are a result of the geothermal activity beneath the surface, where magma heats groundwater, causing it to rise and escape through fissures in the Earth's crust. Our stop for the night was in Húsavík, the oldest settlement in Iceland, which is said to have been the town where the first house was ever built on the island. We parked at our hotel to get dressed in our swimsuits, as I had something special in mind for our anniversary evening. We ended the day at GOC to relax and relieve ourselves of the last 4 days of adventuring. GOC is popular among Icelanders and visitors. The sea baths have several infinity pools with different temperature options, overlooking the Skjálfandi Bay and Mount Húsavíkurfjall. Day 5 started with a quick walk across the street from our hotel to Skjálfandi Bay, where our whale watching company was located. Before leaving for our trip, we had researched Húsavík and learned that it was considered the whale watching capital of Iceland. It was reported that tours leaving from Húsavík saw whales 98% of the time. Whale watching season runs from March to November, but peaks during summer when the waters are calm and a range of whales feed in the bay. Humpback whales are most common, but there is a chance to spot blue whales and orcas. Most fishing boats are made of wood, which are better suited for approaching whales. We decided to use North Sailing for our whale watching tour, who even had a marine biologist on board to provide us plenty of educational information and answer any questions we may have had. As they finished their brief, we came across a humpback whale directly ahead at 11 o'clock. We were able to spot the humpback from water coming out of the blowhole. This began a full 2 hours of whale spotting. Humpback whales can dive for about 30 minutes, but in the summer they typically do not exceed 5 minutes. This gave us plenty of chances to view the humpback as it continued coming back up to the surface. When the humpback dives, it raises its tail fluke, exposing the underside. Halfway through the tour, Joey and I decided to move up to the top viewing platform next to the marine biologist and the tour operator. It was less crowded, and Joey was able to ask questions and even answer a question they were discussing about jellyfish. What happened next, we weren't expecting. The humpback started going into a sequence of pedicle slaps. The peduncle of a whale is the muscular area where the tail fluke connects to the body. In a peduncle slap, the whale throws its tail sideways, slamming into the water with a huge splash. This is generally regarded as an aggressive or defensive action, although the marine biologist said that others believe it is more of a playful action. Either way, it was an amazing sight to see. On the way back into the harbor, the North Sailing crew provided hot chocolate and cinnamon rolls for all of the passengers. This was welcomed because it was cold out in the bay, and the hot chocolate warmed up our hands for the first time in a few hours. We were ready to get back to Big Bertha to keep heading west. Leaving Húsavík, we had to travel back south for about an hour before reconnecting to the ring road. Right where Road 845 meets Highway 1, there is a popular waterfall named Godafoss. It was a little different than most spots we had visited so far, with large tourist buses and a souvenir shop and restaurant close by. But we decided that it would be worth it to take a look around. Joey did not share the same opinion and ended up staying in the car. I'm pretty sure he had had enough of waterfalls at this point. 1,000 years ago, a law speaker named Þorgeir Ljósvetningagodi threw the pagan statues of Norse into this waterfall and made Christianity Iceland's official religion. This supposedly angered the gods, so they split the waterfall in two. This is how Godafoss got its name, which translates to the waterfall of the gods. Leaving Godafoss, we kept traveling west towards our next spot, Vitsarkur. It took us almost 3 hours to get there, so day 5 was a lot of driving, which we expected. To get to Vitsarkur, we had to pass through Akureyri, the largest city in North Iceland, and the second largest city in the entire country with the exception of Reykjavik. Vitsarkur lies along the eastern shore of the Vatnsnes Peninsula. Folklore says that Vitsarkur was originally a troll, determined to rip the bells down from Thingeyraklaustur Convent, one of Iceland's most beautiful churches. It is said that trolls, unlike elves, are terrified of Christianity. The troll was so angry and persistent that it didn't notice the sun was rising and was instantly petrified for eternity once hit by its rays. After Vitsarkur, we headed towards the town of Hvammstangil. Hvammstangi is a perfect small town to relax and unwind after a long day of traveling, and is also the ideal base camp to replenish as there were several small restaurants along the peninsula. Day 6, we came full circle all the way back to Reykjavik, ending the Diamond Circle driving trip along the entirety of Iceland. Just outside of the capital, we stopped in order to do a hike that we had been excited about all week, the Glimmer Waterfall hike. From the south side of the waterfall, after a 30-minute walk from the car park through some beautiful lupin fields, you'll have to hike down through a small cave to the Sa River. This is where the trail gets a little less family-friendly and a bit more challenging. The bridge across is no more than a wooden log and a rope. Joey led the way over the river, and then myself, and then Haley went last so that I could record both of them. The crossing wasn't very difficult, but I could see how it might be different for anyone traveling with small children. Long strides are required for most of the steps, and the transition from the rope to the log can be a little tricky. After the river crossing, the hike stays a little challenging, and proper hiking shoes are imperative as parts of the trail get really steep. For quite a bit of the hike, you have to hang on to cables and chains to help you keep your balance. It's worth it though, as right around the corner is the first viewpoint of the actual falls, and it's incredible. After the first viewpoint, it's only about another half-mile until you reach the summit of Glimmer Canyon. The summit is beautiful and windy and cold, so be prepared. It was hard for us to communicate with each other, so we decided to take in the beauty around us quickly and continue on upwards. At the top of the Sa River, the hike becomes flat. The river, which divides the counties Kjósarsýsla and Borgarfjarðarsýsla, is cold and has a strong current along its path, even though it's not necessarily that deep. With Joey leading the way, we had to find a good spot to cross in order to take the entire loop of the trail. We knew there was more to see, so turning around and going back the way we came was not an option. Without proper water shoes, we had no choice but to take off our boots and roll up our hiking pants, so that's what we did. Joey had other ideas, walking straight through the river in his tennis shoes. The water was ice cold, and the rocks were sharp. Haley and I both had a hard time crossing, but we grabbed hold of each other and powered through it. It's a good thing that we did, because the other side of Glimmer Canyon offered a completely different experience than where we had just explored. About a quarter of the way down the other side of the canyon, we came across a large rock pile and decided to add a rock each. These stacked rock formations are called cairns. In Nordic countries, cairns are used as a trail or sea marker. In Iceland specifically, they were traditionally placed along single-track roads to mark trails and let travelers know that they are on the right path. These old cairns are protected and are never to be tampered with, only to add a rock and continue on your journey. Heading down from Glimmer Canyon was a challenge in itself, and we ended up getting lost for a while. Eventually, it opened up and we were able to gauge where the Super Jeep was parked by following the river. Once back, we headed out for our last major adventure of our trip, tucked into the deep Highlands and revered as one of the best views in not just Iceland, but all of the world. This hike is known as Valahnukur, which is found in the Thorsmork region of South Iceland, and was a fitting grand finale for our week full of exploration. There are many different river crossings on the way to Thorsmork, but the final river before entering is Krossa. If you ask anybody whether you should attempt this crossing on your own, they will tell you not to, and to consider taking a large bus with oversized tires. We felt comfortable after a week of traveling in some of Iceland's most remote areas, and we had rented a Super Jeep with a large ground clearance and a snorkel for the engine. We do not recommend attempting this crossing without prior research and a proper rental vehicle. While crossing the Krossa and entering the valley, you begin to see dramatic volcanic mountains and incredible glacier views. This spectacular valley, which was designated a nature reserve in 1921, offers some of the most stunning hiking routes in all of the world. We knew that we wanted to hike to the top of Thorsmork to get a view of the entire region. The hike that we needed to take was the Tinfjell Circle, a 6.2-mile loop that starts at the mountain huts where we parked Big Bertha. The mountain hut at Langidalur is where we began our hike. These huts are where most people rest when staying in the area for an extended amount of time. The hut is a large wooden building with multiple bunk beds for hikers and remind me of large military barracks from my time in the service. The hut is an open space with 75 beds available, with 2 large community kitchens right next door. Thorsmørk is named after the Norse god of thunder, Thor, who is the son of Odin, the king of Asgard and all the Norse gods. He is widely known for his magical hammer, the Mjolnir. Icelanders believe that Thor struck his hammer down at this very location, which created a depression that turned into a valley. The canyon has every landscape you could wish for at the end of a challenging hike. Frozen glaciers, volcanic mountains, lush green hills, and a system of glacial rivers that run in every direction. After a long week of non-stop adventures, it was time for us to get back into the capital city, Reykjavik, to rest for our last 2 days. There are certain places that you visit that have a lasting impression on you, and you leave a part of yourself there when your time to explore has come to an end. Iceland is one of these places. The culture was incredible, and the nature has to be seen in person to truly be appreciated. Our family sends a warm thank you to the people of Iceland for the opportunity to visit such a beautiful place. This is an experience that we will carry with us for the rest of our lives.